mineral water at home. I just keep filling it up with soda water. That's not.
Yeah, it is. Oh, no.
That's what. I don't think
He's not in the room.
oh, that's fine. Oh, it's all right, don't point him out. I knew I'd spoken to him, but then I couldn't see him. I kept thinking, have I got such a face blank? Oh, is it for the men? What the men? I think mine's still. We can always stop. And you can have those. Course. No, I started yesterday. I'm not saying I started it, but yesterday I decided to do something different.
Are you being honest?
Yeah, okay. Seems like it. Yeah. Do something different.
Yeah, your mic's on.
Good evening, ladies and gentlemen. Could you all please take your places? Close. So, could somebody please just close the doors? Thank you. Before we start the usual proceedings, I'm sure you will all have been extremely saddened to learn of the death of Her late Majesty Queen Elizabeth II, and we will now observe a minute's silence. Thank you. If you'd like to be seated. If I could call upon Councillor Foster, would you like to say a few words?
Thanks, Mayor. Much has been said over the past 13 days about Her Majesty Queen Elizabeth II's passing, and as many of you know, I've shared it before, I signed the oath of allegiance to Queen Elizabeth II on the 31st of October 1988, and I hold that allegiance very close to my heart. It's to her, not the government, not the Prime Minister at the time, it was to her, as all members of the armed forces did. I'd like to publicly thank, Mayor, both yourself and the officers of this council, how they've conducted themselves and how they have seamlessly managed what was a very stressful time for everybody, and the way in which the entire council has responded to the passing of Her Majesty the Queen Elizabeth. And without saying too much more, we send our condolences to the royal family and wish the King, King Charles III, all the best. Thank you, Mayor.
Mrs. Walton.
Duke of Lancaster reigned for over 70 glorious years. This is a moment of great sadness, and her loss will be deeply felt by the people of the United Kingdom, Great Britain and Northern Ireland, the Commonwealth and all parts of the world, as we have just witnessed during the past few days. Her Gracious Majesty was loved, admired and respected, and we must treasure the memory of a long life well lived. Her love, her service, devotion, justice and grace, her dedication, duty and decency. She was an inspiration to all of us. It is very hard at this moment in time to imagine life without her, as she was a shining light for all of us in an ever-changing world, and we must all strive to keep alive her devotion to a life of service, duty and unwavering faith. Her humility, wisdom, stability and love for her people throughout her long life will never be forgotten. In the most difficult of times, she helped to guide us through, and the world is a better place because of her. We send heartfelt and sincere condolences to all her family at this very sad time for them and for all of us, and hope that they find comfort in the difficult days ahead. Thank you, Your Majesty, for your long reign, love and service. You were an example to us all. Rest in glorious and eternal peace, and God save the King, Charles III.
Councillor Turner.
II. She dedicated her life to serving our country and the Commonwealth for 70 years and was a figurehead of stability and unity during times of great change. a devoted servant to the people of this country, a loving mother, grandmother and great-grandmother, a life of devotion and service. She will be remembered with gratitude and profound affection. Our thoughts are with the royal family at this time, and now they can be in peace to review her death privately, is what I was trying to say. Rest in peace, our Queen.
Thank you. Comments and sentiments. Before we start the meeting, perhaps I could offer a thought for the day. We're meeting today on the International Day of Peace. International Day of Peace, or World Peace Day, was declared by the United Nations in 1981, and it provides a globally shared date for all humanity to commit to peace and to contribute to building a culture of peace. It was later in 2001 that the official date for the International Day of Peace was declared to be September the 21st. Until then, World Peace Day was observed on the inaugural session of the Annual General Assembly, which is the third Tuesday of September. It was quite appropriate, therefore, that the very last engagement I undertook before the sad passing of Her Majesty the Queen was the official opening of the Peace Garden at Midge Hall Methodist Church, which offers a place for quiet reflection within a beautiful garden. It was there that I met a family of Syrian refugees who'd fled the conflict in their homeland and had found sanctuary here within the borough and a peaceful community to which they now belong. The father had helped out with the planting and cultivation of the garden. Latterly, I've been involved in taking up the case of Ukrainian refugees seeking a school place for a child, likewise who have found sanctuary and safety within our borough. Following the recent proclamation of the accession of the King, I was involved in a conversation about the monarchy being an accident of birth, and a wise old sage, or Mick Titherington as is otherwise known, commented that we are all accidents of birth. It's an accident of birth that we were born in one of the richest 6% of countries, which gave me food for thought that our good fortune is not shared by so many others around the world. So on this International Day of Peace, let us simply think a while about those for whom conflict is a daily reality, particularly at this time in Ukraine, and give sanctuary to those who are fleeing from it, whilst being grateful for the peace that we enjoy. If I could now move on to some domestic arrangements for the meeting. Due to the regulations surrounding voting, only those members physically present are able to vote. However, if members dialing in via Teams would like to contribute to the debate, please use the raise hand function on your iPad. If you use one of the communal microphones, please use the cleaning materials provided after you have used it. Mobile devices, please ensure that all electronic equipment is either on silent mode or switched off to minimise interruption. The meeting is being live streamed during open session for members of the public to watch. If you would like to speak, please press your microphone to let me know. When I invite you to speak, your microphone will turn red. At this point, I would like to bring forward one of the notices of motion at item 13, as we have two young ladies who inspired the motion here with us this evening. And we are now going to invite into the chamber a number of young school children who have come to support this motion and to address us accordingly. They were certainly here earlier because I was having my photograph taken with them. Maybe we're giving them too much pop. Right, I can see some movement just outside the door there, so I do believe they're coming to join us. Okay, I think we're all in. So if I could ask the Deputy Leader of the Council, Cabinet Member for Health and Wellbeing, Councillor Michael Titherington, to present the motion.
First of all, endorse what you were saying in your thought for today, and I'm sure the council will join with you in wishing peace across the world. And I also want to thank you for agreeing to bring this motion forward on the agenda to allow the pupils of Northbrook Primary Academy in Leyland to observe proceedings and to contribute to the debate. But I bring this motion forward having been prompted by a letter received from the then Year 4 pupils, now Year 5, at the Academy. And I'm sure members will be reassured and pleased to note that pupils of that age are sufficiently aware and interested in the issues surrounding climate change and the world's ecosystem, that they want to be involved and make their own contribution to protecting and preserving this planet of ours for their future and for future generations. During the deliberations and research, they identified an area where the council has so far failed to act. And as part of their lessons on persuasive letter writing, they decided to write to me expressing their disappointment that their council had not signed up to the Don't Let Go campaign. And I think at this juncture I should acknowledge the contributions that Councillor Jane Bell has made in relation to this, because on some sides she might have felt that she was a lone voice, but and I'm sure she'll be pleased to hear that this motion is coming forward. But they pointed out that in their research had uncovered the harmful effects that the mass release of balloons and sky lanterns were having on our, as they so eloquently put it, our beautiful earth, and in particular, marine wildlife. Hannah, the letter writer on behalf of the class, goes on to point out that balloons litter our beaches, and even the biodegradable ones take 4 years to do so. Likewise, sky lanterns present the same pollutant dangers. The Marine Conservation Society points out that our oceans are in crisis, with every day valuable species and habitats that store carbon are being destroyed. And they stress that the time to act is now. But the balloons and sky lanterns can either end up anywhere, causing harms to livestock, woodland and wildlife. Hannah's letter has highlighted an action that the council can take now to help them in their quest to stop the mass release of balloons and sky lanterns, and in so doing help with the goal of us recovering the health of our oceans as well as our ecosystem. They ask us to join many other councils up and down the country and introduce the ban on this practice wherever we can, and to encourage others to do the same. Hannah's letter has made a powerful and persuasive case, and it's a credit to the Academy and other schools that they have so actively engaged in the climate change challenge. It's incumbent upon us as a council to listen and act when such a powerful case or powerful cases are made. The pupils of Northbrook have highlighted a need for us to take action. They have asked, we have listened, now is the opportunity for the council to act. I therefore move the motion and seek support of the council. Thank you, Mr. Mayor.
Do we have a seconder?
Thank you, Mr. Mayor. It gives me great pleasure to second this motion, and I'd like to applaud the fortitude of the young ladies and young men who have come here tonight to put their case across, which is probably, well, please most of you that I won't be speaking for so long. The mass release of balloons and things like that has all sorts of issues for many aspects of wildlife and of course, aircraft safety as well. Some of the things I've quickly looked up, for instance, a foil balloon can stay in the air for a week, so you wonder how far it will travel. None of these things are recyclable because you'll never go and get them. So it gives me great pleasure to second this motion.
Thank you. We have two young citizens with us this evening that are going to speak to us. So, Hannah, would you like to speak first?
Mr. Mayor, thank you for your kind invitation to speak with you this evening. Before hearing about the dangers of mass balloon releases, I thought balloons were just fun and exciting entertainment. However, I've recently discovered what a hazard they can be to our planet. Don't Let Go is a campaign to prevent sea creatures from being harmed by mass balloon releases and sky lanterns. The danger for sea creatures occurs when they swim up to the surface, having spotted the bobbing, glistening balloons and thinking they are food. When they try to eat the balloon, they can end up with plastic in their stomachs, which can make them poorly or even kill them. Another danger is that they might swallow the balloons whole. Finally, when they try to eat the balloon, the plastic string is busy wrapping itself around the poor, innocent creature's body, cutting into their delicate flesh. The more they struggle, the tighter it becomes. Do you think it is worth it for a few moments of fun or beauty when this could contribute to the millions of animals suffering, injured, or being killed worldwide? Thank you for listening.
And Abby, would you like to address the council?
Thank you, Mr. Mayor, for inviting us over this evening. We ask you if you can ban mass balloon and sky lantern releases because it causes major destruction to habitats. Sky lanterns can cause fires as they use open flame to float. This could destroy habitats and set animal housing, feed and bedding alight. The fire risk is higher during the dry summer months, as it is easier for grass and countryside to catch fire. It's our responsibility to care for our planet and save the animals. Thank you for listening.
Thank you. I'll now open it to debate. Councillor Jane Bell.
Thank you, Mr. Mayor. Just give me a minute to stand up. No, I do. I do. As long as there's a desk to hold me. Right. Now, ever since I was a little girl, and that was some considerable time ago, balloons have always been part of fun times, of birthday parties, of days out by the seaside, when you could buy a balloon from a man who had them in a great big bunch, and he'd tie it around your wrist so it wouldn't blow away. And a part of Christmas decorations, always Christmas decorations, the fun blowing them up and bursting them behind somebody to make them jump and letting the air out to make that very rude noise. So great fun with balloons. Now, I look around this room and I can see at least 50 people. I know there's more, but at least 50 people. And I know that some of you are about 50 years old. Some might be younger, some might be older, but it does make the maths easier. Now then, if each of us 50 had one balloon for every birthday, that would make it 2,500 balloons. And that is certainly enough for a mass release. Every one of these balloons is still here. It's in our rivers, our oceans, our soil. They may have reduced in size, but they will never completely disappear. That should give us some pause for thought. The fish we eat and the water we drink will be polluted. Until about 5 years ago, I really hadn't given it much thought. And then climate change, biodiversity, and eco-friendly became the common parlance. And opinions began to change, me included. I'd always loved my garden and trees and snow, and so now I'm very much in favour of alternative ways of marking celebrations and remembering things and decorating. Paper flowers, for instance, bunting. You could make patchwork. You could plant a tree. You could plant bulbs or scatter seeds. Released balloons do not go up to heaven, but land in trees and fields and waterways where they can endanger wildlife. And I think that point was made very well by you girls, by the way. Well done. So I didn't need to repeat it, did I? Good. So lanterns, although very pretty when they're going away on a dark night, are downright dangerous. Fire and wire, whose bright idea was that? And in supporting this motion, I would like all councillors to reflect on how to discourage their local community groups from using balloons for any reason and find alternatives. And as a postscript, some time ago, I posted on Facebook about not using balloons, and I thought possibly the Leyland Festival would be a good place to start. There was a reaction. Would you believe? I was a party pooper, and I felt that if I left my house, I would be shot at dawn. So people are going to take a lot of persuading, and it starts here tonight with us. Thank you, children. Thank you, Mr. Mayor.
Thank you. Councillor Karen Walton.
Thank you, Mr. Mayor. And thank you, Hannah and Abby and the Year 5 from Northbrook Primary Academy. You are a credit to your school tonight. Very well done. Thank you for coming to speak to us. We support this. We're happy to support the concept of this notice of motion tonight and request, as has been mentioned before, that officers work on this notice of motion to make it more robust in identifying not only the harmful effects of balloons and sky lanterns on the environment in terms of carbon emissions and biodiversity, but also to include what has been said tonight, the wildlife, the agricultural livestock, agricultural buildings, the woodland, the heathland fires that we have, and crops and wildlife in general. So we're here to support you, and it starts here. And we all need to encourage everybody to stop buying balloons and those sky lanterns. Thank you.
Thank you. Councillor Angela Turner.
Absolutely well done, Hannah, and your friends for bringing this issue up. I know there's been many occasions where I walk into Preston, especially around Christmas time, to the shops there, the card shops and the shops that set up to sell Christmas presents. And my heart sinks when I see a massive shelf full of balloons for everybody's birthday when they're 10, 11, 12 and up to 90. And it always makes me think that we as a country really aren't doing enough or taking it seriously, the hazards and the damage that balloons cause our planet. And it's great that you guys have come along and brought this issue up. Wholeheartedly support you. And I think when the officers are working on the report, the council obviously has a lot of interrelationships with a lot of other organisations. I think it was touched on before, and communities who we can set that benchmark with them to also work with us to eradicate the release of mass balloons. So there's a very powerful enabler there using the council and its partners and organisations to spread the word. So well done. You've shamed me actually, because we should have thought about it. Thank you.
Councillor Alan Ogilvie.
Thank you, Mayor. Yes, can I also add my congratulations to the school children? I can't imagine that I would ever have managed to cope at their age to come to a council and speak in front of an audience. Sometimes I wonder if I can do it at my age, but here we are. I just want to add a bit of extra weight to this. I fully support the notice of motion. I want to come at it from a slightly different angle, and I'm talking about helium-filled balloons. Now, supply of helium on our planet is finite. It cannot be manufactured by man. It can only be harvested through drilling operations that are ongoing for gas. Now, knowing that the world is moving away from gas, obviously drilling operations will move away from that. So the supply of helium will become even more finite. The main other use for helium is mainly in medical research technology. So if it's a balance between people having a fun-filled helium balloon or being able to support medical research, for me, it's a no-brainer. So we need to make sure that we do not waste helium. It's a valuable commodity. Thank you, Mr. Mayor.
Thank you. Are there any other members of council wish to speak? In which case, are there any members of the public may wish to speak? Councillor Titherington, would you like to summate?
Just want to join with everybody else who's made a contribution in congratulating the pupils that have come along this evening and spoken. I sort of recognise what Councillor Ogilvie said, is that some of us, still find it, a trepidatory, that's a word, exercise to get up and talk to people in this. So I just want to say to the pupils, thank you for raising this issue. And as I said in my opening remarks, we have listened. We're now going to make a decision. And so it just goes to show is that you can always make a difference. So congratulations to you. And I'm sure that the council will support it.
Thank you. We're now going to move to the vote, and for ease of not having to use the push buttons, is there anybody against? Anybody wishes to abstain? In which case, that is unanimously carried. And thank you to our visitors for bringing this to our attention. It has got the full support of every member of the council, so thank you. Now then, I'm not allowed to stay out late on school nights, and I'm quite sure you're not either. So you're welcome to stay for a bit longer, or if you need to now go home and get ready for bed, I'm sure nobody will be upset if you now leave us. So thank you for coming, and thank you for presenting the case to us. Right, if I can now bring us back to the agenda as set out. First and foremost, do we have any apologies for absence? Have any other apologies? Councillor Ogilvie? So we're not getting a full moon tonight. I'm here all week.
Going so well.
Any declarations of interest? No, in which case, if we can now move to the minutes of the last meeting, is there a mover for those? Yeah. Thank you. Are those seconded?
Seconded.
Is everybody in favour? Anybody against? If we can take that as agreed. That then moves us on to Mayor's announcements. It's with great sadness that I announce to the council the sad passing of the ex-mayoress Cecilia Palmer, who was mayoress in 1983 to 1984. I know a number of colleagues here tonight have many fond memories of her, and I would like to pass on my sincere sympathies to her family at this difficult time on behalf of South Ribble Borough Council. This is a difficult bit. I would also like to pass on my sincere condolences to our colleague and friend, Councillor Jane Bell, whose daughter recently passed away, and all of our thoughts are with you and your family at this extremely sad and difficult time. That then takes me on to my mayoral engagements. On the 20th of July, we attended the police station in Leyland following a refurbishment to officially relaunch the 24/7 emergency response policing in the borough. I'm pleased to say that they were still wearing baseball caps at the time, but I'm sure now that those have been abolished, crime will drastically reduce. On the 23rd of July, we attended the Leyland Warriors Summer Festival at Moss Side Playing Fields and posed with the Rugby League Challenge Trophy and met Wigan Warriors captain and New Zealand international Thomas Leilua, or however you may pronounce it in New Zealand. Yeah, I certainly wasn't arguing with him. On the 27th of July, we attended the official unveiling of the gardens and memorial of the famous Battle of Bamber Bridge and met Gemma Roberts, the producer of the Railway Children Return, which has a similar theme to the events that actually took place in Bamber Bridge at that time. On the 1st of August, the Mayor of Burnley invited all of the mayors of Lancashire to a tour of Townley Hall, the Mayor of Burnley's ancestral home. And I've offered to repay the invite with a tour of my ancestral terraced house by the cotton mills in Middleton. On the 5th of August, we attended the Leyland Play Scheme final day. The mayoress actually volunteered there as a teenager, so quite recently. And it doesn't seem so long ago that I was dropping my own children off to attend. 6th of August was the Galloway's Sight Loss Charity. They held their annual Beer and Banger Festival at Walmer Bridge, where again we met an array of amazing volunteers, as well as having a couple of sips of real ale. On the 9th of August, the Leyland in Bloom Committee presented a cheque of £500 to the mayoral charities, raised from the proceeds of the Leyland Open Gardens, for which I am extremely grateful. In the afternoon, we hosted an afternoon tea for Father Jonathan Cotton and the Benedictine Order, who had both left the parish of Leyland. Father Jonathan had served the congregation of St Mary's in Leyland and the wider community for 30 years and had been chaplain to previous mayors. On the 12th of August, we attended the St Ambrose Players for the production of Hay Fever by Noel Coward, and then met the cast after the show. 15th of August, the Community Network and Outreach Service held a family fun day and water safety campaign at Leyland Warriors, where I met Rebecca Ramsey, who had lost her son in wild water and now campaigns to highlight the dangers of wild water swimming and promotes the need to learn to swim. On the 23rd of August, we attended St Catherine's Hospice to present the volunteers with service awards before joining them for afternoon tea in the company of Cliff Hughes, no less. One of the awards I presented was for an incredible 40 years of service, almost going back to when the hospice first opened. On the 24th of August, we attended Leyland DAF for a presentation on the company by the Chief Executive, and then had a guided tour of the factory, including the development of market-leading electric trucks. On the 28th of August, we attended the Gregson Green Gala and opened the event before visiting the community and charity stalls. If you visit the Mayor's Facebook page, there's a photograph of the Mayoress in the Beat the Goalie competition, demonstrating what Preston North End are missing up front. Then we went on to the President's Day at New Longton Sports and Social Club, meeting the first female president of the club. 3rd of September, we attended the New Longton Village Hall for the planting of a commemorative tree to mark the Platinum Jubilee of Her Majesty the Queen, and we then went on to open New Longton Flower Show and present the prizes to the various winners in the various categories. And I had great delight in presenting a silver trophy to Councillor Margaret Smith, who won the Best Rose competition. On the 4th of September, we attended the opening of the Peace Garden at Midge Hall Methodist Church. And finally, on the 11th of September, we attended the Harris in Preston, along with the other mayors from Lancashire and the sheriff. And then we came back to announce the proclamation of the new king here at the Civic Centre. So, bit of a busy month all around, or busy time. So that then takes us on to item 6, the report of the Cabinet. If I could ask Councillor Foster to propose.
Thanks, Mayor. So the meeting of the Cabinet, colleagues, which was held on the 14th of September 2022, within there, the Cabinet reviewed the Q1 performance monitoring report. It then went on to review the capital and balance sheet monitoring report again for Q1, along with the revenue budget monitoring report for Q1. We then went on to debate and discuss the Worden Park improvement plan and approved that, and then approved the Worden Hall leases. Mayor, we then went on to approve the contract procedure and award for the procurement of an asset management system, and then agreed the procurement strategy for the Jubilee Gardens construction phase, contract administration for the appointment of a project manager and quantity surveyor. And finally, Mayor, we reviewed the site investigation procurement and approved it for the Leyland Town deal. And me and my colleagues are ready for any questions you may have. Thank you.
Is that seconded?
I second that, Mayor.
Thank you. Does anybody wish to speak to the report? Councillor Matthew Tomlins.
Thank you, Mayor. The leader has just asked me to reiterate what I said at Cabinet for those members who weren't able to attend about our quarterly monitoring report. While it is only very early days, Q1 of 4, obviously, there are, for the first time for a while, storm clouds on the horizon with regards to the finances of the council. The pending pay award and the uncertainty around utility bills are certainly going to put some pressure on our finances as we go forward. We've got a good track record of managing finances, so there's no need to be alarmed at this stage, but I do think it's worth just flagging to people that there's going to be pressure on the budgets as we go forward. I'm sure as we get to Q2 and 3, these things will become more clear, but in the spirit of openness and transparency that we always try to promote, I do think it's worth saying very early on that these things are around. The LGA, I know, are lobbying government strongly around the pay award, and how councils that have budgeted for 2%, most councils, and where council tax rises are limited back to 1.99% by law, how we're meant to finance a wage rise of what could be 7% or more. It does need to be financed. It does need to be financed. If inflation is running at 11%, no one can criticise unions for asking for a significant pay rise. But it does put pressure on our finances, and it's something we'll have to keep an eye on. But as I say, at this stage, no cause for alarm. I'm just flagging things up for people as we go forward.
Anybody else wish to speak to this item? In which case, that is for noting. We're all agreed that's noted. Thank you. I could then move on to urgent decisions. Councillor Foster to move.
Thanks, Mayor. So, report in front of Council informs of a number of urgent decisions taken in accordance, Mayor, with the urgency procedures outlined within the Council's constitution. And if members move to page 19 of the agenda pack, they will see that there have been 3 urgent decisions made. First one using Standing Order 35, which was the immediate revocation of a Hackney carriage driving licence taken by the chair of the licensing committee. The second was the general exception procedure, i.e. less than 28 days notice of a site investigation and procurement by the Cabinet. And finally, Chair, there was a mutual agreement using the general exception procedure and the waiver of scrutiny calling in respect to a member of staff. Thank you.
That's seconded.
Seconded.
Thank you. Does anybody wish to speak to this item? In which case it's for noting. Are we agreed that's noted? Thank you. That then takes us on to item 8, which is the report of the Governance Committee. Councillor Watkinson. Oh, sorry. Councillor Sharples.
On the 26th of July, the Governance Committee considered, I think it was 8 reports. Just to summarise, you can find the details of the reports on page 23 of the papers. We considered the audit progress report and sector update, which was presented by the Council's external auditor, Graham Thornton. We considered Treasury Management Annual Report 21-22 and Quarter 1 Monitoring, a draft core financial statements 21-22, SIPFA Resilience Index 2020-2021, Strategic Risk Register, and the Centre for Governance and Public Scrutiny Review. I'd like to thank members for their contributions of that evening and officers for the due diligence, and I would like to recommend that Council note the report. Thank you, Chair.
Thank you. Is that seconded? Thank you. Anybody wish to speak to this item? In which case it's for noting. Can we agree that's noted? Thank you. That then takes us to item 9, which is the annual performance report 21-22. Councillor Foster to propose.
Thanks, Mayor, and hopefully all members will agree a very uplifting and positive report that is presented to Council. It's there to provide Council and our community with a summary of the Council's achievements during the 21-22 municipal year and provide, Mayor, an overview of the challenges and opportunities facing the Council moving forward. The annual report forms part of the Council's performance management framework and supports the Council in reflecting on performance over the previous 12 months. In summary and in overall, the Council has performed, Mayor, particularly well against the corporate strategy, with significant progress achieved against the key priorities. All members will recognise an exemplary Council, thriving communities, a fair local economy that works for everyone, good homes, green spaces and healthy places. Despite the challenges and uncertainty resulting from the global pandemic and other economic factors, I'm really pleased to report that the Council has continued to deliver the priorities and projects set out in the 21-22 corporate strategy successfully, while supporting businesses, leading community recovery and maintaining high quality services. Looking ahead, Mayor, challenges for the Council include continuing to support residents and businesses to recover following the pandemic, responding to anticipated increases in inflation and the cost of living, increased demand for local services, and continuing to tackle climate change. In 2021, Mayor, a resident survey was undertaken to better understand the views on what communities within the borough thought about their local area, the way in which the Council delivered services and support following the pandemic. Findings from the survey show overall resident satisfaction has increased compared to the previous survey conducted in 2020. 85% of our residents said they are satisfied with their local area as a place to live. 75% of our residents are satisfied with the way the Council runs things. 83% were satisfied with waste and recycling services. 79% were satisfied with parks and green open spaces. And 90% of our residents felt safe when outside in their local area during the day. It's important to note, Mayor, that when benchmarked against the Local Government Association polling, South Ribble performed above average in the 3 main areas of satisfaction, those being a place to live, the way in which the Council runs things, and providing value for money. Mr. Mayor, our key achievements. The Council continues to strengthen partnership working by bringing together partners from across South Ribble and Chorley to form a single strategic partnership. The Chorley and South Ribble Partnership hosted the first ever economic summit event where local partners came together to discuss the future of the local economy following the pandemic. The Council also took part in the Local Government Association Peer Challenge in July 2021 as part of the Council's commitment to improvement and received feedback on the Council's current strengths and any areas to further embed improvements. The peer team recognised the positive work and outcomes in relation to governance, delivering effective services throughout the pandemic and continuing to change the ways in which we work. In April 22, Mayor, the peer team then revisited South Ribble to complete a 6-month review of the progress against the initial action plan from their virtual visit of 2021. The feedback, again, was very positive, and the LGA peer team acknowledged the progress made and commented on the council's approach to engaging with communities via the community hubs. As part of the council's commitment to supporting residents' positive mental health and well-being, Lancashire Youth Challenge were commissioned to deliver a 24-week programme which focused on raising young people's aspirations, confidence building and the development of emotional resilience. And something we'll all never forget, Mayor, to mark the Queen's Jubilee, the council hosted a weekend of entertainment over the long bank holiday weekend in June 2022. The planned celebrations held in Worden Park included a Great British themed Leyland Festival, which was then followed by our 80s themed Music in the Park event. The extended bank holiday weekend was a huge success with attendance well in excess of 25,000. In March 22, Mayor, the council, working closely with the Football Foundation, commenced works to the £2 million Bamber Bridge Sports Hub as part of the council's commitment to investing in high quality community facilities and supporting residents to become more active through participation in sport. The development includes the creation of 2 new 3G artificial sports pitches and a fully accessible single-storey pavilion in Bamber Bridge. A £35 million Leyland Town deal has progressed, Mayor, with the land acquisitions taking place and business cases have been submitted to central government, and we await with bated breath for hopeful approval within the next 3 to 4 weeks. Businesses have continued to be supported to recover from the impacts of the pandemic to help maintain a strong business sector and support the local economy. The council have supported over 3,208 businesses and processed COVID-19 support grants totalling over £9.5 million. Mayor, as part of the council's commitment to providing high quality affordable homes, work has progressed to deliver the Mckenzie Arms council housing and Jubilee Gardens extra care schemes. Construction work has commenced on site to deliver the Mckenzie Arms scheme itself. The development is set to be completed by the end of this year and will provide a mix of 15 new affordable townhouses and apartments, again in Bamber Bridge. The Jubilee Gardens extra care scheme, which will provide self-contained homes with support services to our over 55s to support independent living within the borough, has progressed with design work, and the appointment of a main contractor will be coming to council in November. The programme to transform the historic Worden Hall building is almost now complete, and all members will be aware that there is a detailed programme through till Christmas to deliver the opening fully of this wonderful building. Finally, Mr. Mayor, the council has delivered a number of key activities to help address climate change and to protect the local environment. These include the installation of solar panels here at the Civic Centre, a home energy saving scheme promoted through the council's website, the installation of new electric vehicle charging points in Leyland, Bamber Bridge, Lostock Hall and Penwortham, and delivering over 8 kilometres of improvements to footpaths across our Green Links network. Mr. Mayor, we are proud with the work this council continues to deliver on behalf of our residents and businesses, and proud to commend to the best performing council in Lancashire this report. Thank you.
Is that seconded?
Seconded, Mr. Mayor, and reserve the right.
Now open that up to debate. Would anybody wish to comment on this item? Councillor Alan Ogilvie.
Thank you, Mayor. Thank you for what is a very comprehensive and detailed report, but I just want to ask for some clarification on a specific point relative to my ward, and it's relating to page 41 and the completion of Worden Hall. I'm just looking at the wording at the very bottom. The Cabinet member and I had an informal chat about this a couple of months ago. And to some extent, I'm just looking for an update on the status here. It mentions in this report that bookings for events taking place from spring. Can you confirm, is that spring 22 or spring 23? And also in relation to that specific point, when it says that bookings will take place from spring, if it's 23, is that the date when people can start applying for a booking, or is that the date when people who have booked earlier than that can actually hold an event in the hall? Thank you.
I'm not exactly sure which one of you wants to answer that, but I presume it's Councillor Foster.
These aren't read, nobody can hear it online at all. Councillor Ogilvie, I can confirm clearly it is spring 2023 when its bookings can be taken. That's when it's open fully from spring 2023. And I'll get an update to all councillors. The team and the comms team and the team that manage the site down there are commencing taking bookings imminently on the site. They're just finishing off a few more issues associated with the leases and the other businesses that are moving into the hall. But the cafe's open, as hopefully you've been down to see already, and we're doing some additional works to the car park. But the place will be open, fully open, bookings taken from spring 2023.
Anybody else wish to speak on this item? Councillor Karen Walton.
I refer to page 37 and it's the resident survey, and I'm quite concerned about 53% of our residents are not happy with the council's value for money. So could you explain why this figure appears so high, or the actual residents who are happy with the council's value for money is so low?
Thanks, Councillor Watts. Well, as you're acutely aware, we inherited a number of acute legacy value for money issues from your group, where we'd been subjected to external audit intervention for a number of years. And so we've done a fantastic job, and all members will realise now we've just got the first positive value for money conclusion that this council had in about 6 years. So that's one of the reasons. The second reason is, and it's a well-known fact, is that a lot of residents do not think that paying council tax of any description is ever value for money. And so, as Councillor Walton will be aware, anything above 50% of our residents thinking they get good value for money from any local authority is actually a positive. And so there's the answers, Mr. Mayor. Thank you.
Councillor Matthew Tomlinson.
I genuinely wasn't going to speak on this, but just to point out that it's easy to read a report and pick out the little one line that you want to agree with and ignore everything else in the report, because at the bottom of page 28, it says when we are benchmarked against LGA polling, South Ribble performs above average in 3 main areas of satisfaction. And the bottom bullet point is providing value for money. So whilst the figure is lower than anybody would like, clearly against other councils and against the average person's perception of whether a council provides value for money or not, we are performing better than other councils.
Does anybody else wish to speak? In which case, Councillor Tidderington, you reserved your right. Do you wish to speak? Right. The report is for noting, and we note that. Thank you. That now doesn't take us to item 10 because that's been withdrawn. The Standards Committee wish to spend longer considering that item. It doesn't take us to item 11 because that's been withdrawn because I don't think the report is actually available as yet. But that does take us to item 12, which is the extension to cafe pavement licences. And if I could call on the Cabinet Member for Planning, Business Support and Regeneration, Councillor James Flannery, to present the report.
Thank you, Mr. Mayor. Good evening, everyone. As you can see from the pack, this agenda item is to extend the cafe pavement licence. Now, it's a pretty straight up and down one, really. You'll see in the report that it's a statutory requirement for us to adopt this. But nevertheless, the background to this was introduced because of our support for small businesses who needed the space outside so they could facilitate social distancing. So the licensing committee unanimously supported this on the 6th of the 9th. And I think it's an important, if you have a look at it, it's a very comprehensive report, so the officers have done well. You've got the regulations in there, you've got the policy, and the recommendations to council are to note the changes to the Business, and Planning Act 2020, introduced by the Business and Planning Act 2020, pavement licences. This is the wording. Coronavirus amendment regulations, to agree to extend the proposed duration of granting the pavement licences until the 30th of September 2023, as per the Business and Pavement Licensing Act, to confirm the level of fee charge, which is £100 in respect of the application for pavement licences, and to extend the delegated authority given to the officers. Therefore, I would like to ask members now to approve to extend the current cafe pavement licensing scheme until the 30th of September 2023. Thank you, Mr. Mayor.
Thank you. Is that seconded? You wish to speak? In which case, this is an item for decision, so I'm now going to open it to debate. Is there anybody who wishes to speak on this item? Councillor Phil Smith.
Thank you, Mr. Mayor. This is a hangover from COVID. It's something that the government brought in at the time to help businesses extend their business outside because they couldn't meet inside. It's one of the very sensible things that the government brought in, and I'm sure we're happy to support it. Thank you.
Councillor Caleb Tomlinson.
Yeah, thanks, Mr. Mayor. I just echo everything Councillor Phil Smith's just said. Thank you.
Any other members of council wish to speak? In which case, are there any members of the public wish to speak? In which case, we now go to the vote. Is there anybody who's actually against? No abstentions. That's unanimously carried, and that takes us on to item 13, which is the first notice of motion. If I could call on Councillor Angela Turner to move. This is the motion, Warm Spaces for South Ribble.
Thank you, Mr. Mayor. I'm rising to propose this motion as a result of the cost of living crisis we are currently experiencing in the UK. The crisis is resulting in unprecedented pressures on people already struggling with their home finances. This winter, despite the support given by the government, many of our residents from all walks of life in South Ribble will be forced to make tough decisions about when and how long they can switch their house heating on, if at all. I believe we should explore how we can utilise the South Ribble Council facilities and assets in our communities, work with local partners and community groups to see how we can provide support for residents who need it. To see if we can provide to any one of our residents who is cold, a place to go with respect, dignity and warmth, and enjoyment of a little company with some hot refreshments. In conclusion, Mr. Mayor, I'm hoping we can establish a cross-party working group to put together a plan of how provision of such warm spaces can be available within our communities. Nobody in South Ribble should freeze this winter. I hope Council can support my motion. Thank you.
Councillor Hancock to second. Oh. Sorry, I interrupted your round of applause there. Councillor Hancock to second.
Thank you, Mr. Mayor. There is no doubt that the cost of living crisis will affect many of our residents this coming winter. One of the major worries people have, especially the elderly and infirm, is whether they can afford to heat their homes. One way this council can help is to look at the possibility of using our public buildings as warm spaces where residents can visit to keep warm. I fully support and second this motion. Thank you, Mr. Mayor.
Thank you. If I can now open it to debate, does anybody wish to speak? Councillor Karen Walton.
We do support this notice of motion tonight, and we welcome any opportunity that the council can provide to support all our residents to be able to keep warm during the winter months. But we do earnestly request that the working party to be established to generate a plan for the provision of warm spaces for South Ribble is politically balanced so that all members will have the opportunity to have full impact and add details to this plan to support our residents. And I would ask that the recommendations and the budget proposals that will be included from the working group come back to Cabinet or Council at the earliest possible opportunity.
Thank you. Councillor Mick Tillerington.
Thank you, Mr. Mayor. I don't think there is anybody in this chamber or beyond who doesn't recognise the magnitude of the crisis we are now facing. Most people are saying it is on a par, if not greater, than that which we faced during the pandemic. In the past year, we've seen single-year price increases of 95.5% in gas, 53.5% in electricity, 42% in motor fuels, 15% in transport, and 9.5% in food and non-alcoholic beverages. This will have a devastating effect on households, with many, including those who have two adults working, seeing their income falling below that which their essential household expenditure will be. The crisis is of epic proportions, and whilst we recognise and support the sentiments behind the motion, it's the Cabinet's contention that we have to go much further. As a Cabinet, we've not been sitting on our hands. Mr. Mayor, during the pandemic, we saw the emergence of an army of community champions and groups who worked with our officers in a common cause. We built up a framework of community and church groups, as well as a host of organisations, all combining to deliver much needed support for our communities. We developed South Ribble together and adopted the one front door concept. So it seems sensible to us to canvass their views on how best we could address the challenges that face our residents. We held a cost of living conference in August for our community groups and a conference with key partners for these events. And from these events, we charged our officers with drawing up an action plan based on what our communities and community champions had told us. Members will be pleased to note that given the motion before us, included in the plan is an action to work with community centres, sports clubs, churches and faith groups to provide facilities and premises where we can offer a warm welcome. This will include extending and promoting our existing provision, such as our community resocialisation cafes, as well as working with faith groups and others to offer up other provisions where currently none exist. We have pledged our support of the Warm Welcome campaign, and I'm sure that Council will be delighted to hear that. So I hope that this reassures Council that we are on our way to fulfilling the motion, what the motion calls for in relation to warm places, and our resolve in that regard remains steadfast. In addition, we have taken a number of actions, all designed to mitigate the impact of the cost of living crisis on our residents. Those include the setting up of a multi-agency working group to improve partnership, working and coordinate activities. And can I say from the contribution, we will have anybody on that working group that has something positive to say to make it effective, to make what we are trying to do effective. And we've already decided that we will produce a cost of living directory using our South Ribble Together branding to ensure residents know where to go for help and assistance. And this will be online and both and a personal approach. We will build on our existing mental health support, increase the level of outreach support in our community. We will build on the successful Uniform Bank initiative, and we're already currently running a warm coats programme. So, I mean, I'm sure people, and I do know, by the way, that a number of councillors and members from all parties have assisted in that Uniform Bank, and it was well supported, and we're sincerely grateful for that. We will utilise our existing food bank network to offer the best support possible. We hope to provide premises for much needed at the Tippy Toes initiative. We will hold a cost of living drop-in events for residents where residents can access practical support, increase our social prescribing provision, hold community conversations and continue to consider new initiatives. Collaborative approach is essential, Mr. Mayor, and it's important that our activities are coordinated so that they are most effective. All this is designed to ensure that our people can access advice, help and assistance we all need to get through on this major crisis. And let's make it absolutely clear on the point that Councillor Turner made, is that there is no stigma attached to or shame to anybody who is seeking support during these uncertain times. Mr. Mayor, I suggest that the stigma is on the society that allows this to happen, and we support the motion. Thank you.
Councillor Reenie Blow.
Sorry, I'll get up. Thank you, Mr. Mayor. I've listened to these people speaking about heat and keeping people warm. I run a luncheon club for the elderly people of South Ribble. They come from all over South Ribble who want to come, disabled, sick. Anybody is entitled to come to our luncheon club, and we look after them well. And I can't believe that people think that there's nothing going on for elderly people who are disabled, who are sick with different bugs and things which are going around. We all look after one another. All the elderly people look after one another. They make sure that they're all kept warm, healthy and friendly. They don't just think that they're a nuisance to the community. They are not. They are the people who put work into this community and expect something back in return. Thank you, Mr. Mayor.
Councillor Jane Bell.
I'm sorry, Councillor Blow. I think you've misunderstood. I don't think that was what was being said at all. It certainly wasn't what I heard. There is a lot of stuff going on around South Ribble with community groups, and I know already they're already trying to address the problem that's going to happen. So I think somewhere you've got your wires crossed. I know what you do. I know you've been doing it for years because we go back a long time, Reenie. So I know that. I think somewhere along the line you've just misheard or misunderstood what was being said. It wasn't being said that things weren't already happening. They are already happening. I think it's just a case of we need to coordinate and need to know what is going on where, and so that everybody can access it. So that was just something I wanted to clarify, really. Okay, Reenie. Thank you.
Could we come through the chair and not sort of have a debate across the chamber, please? Anybody else wish to speak to this motion? In which case, Councillor Turner, do you wish to sum up?
talk about what we're doing and who we've had meetings with. Let's just, to coin the phrase of Mick Titherington, bloody well get on with it. Thank you.
Twice it's been credited tonight. So. Is there anybody against? Anybody wish to abstain? In which case that's carried unanimously. And that takes us on to the second notice of motion. If I could call on Councillor Turner again.
Thank you, Mr. Mayor. Rising to propose this motion, which contains two parts appertaining to planning. The first concerns a cabinet member with responsibility for planning and, more importantly, planning policy, being a member of the planning committee. Whilst I accept that the Constitution currently allows it, it has not been custom and practice in this council. And certainly the previous incumbents, Bill Evans and Cliff Hughes, did not have the dual role. They attended planning meetings, but not as voting members. Given that the cabinet member is responsible for strategic planning and housing strategy, amongst others, I would argue that there is a potential for a conflict of interest, the recent Pickering Farm application being a case in point. The second part of the motion concerns the calling procedure, where currently, due to a loophole in the guidance, any member of the council can call in an application anywhere in the borough. It cannot be right that a member of the council can do a mate or a neighbour a favour by calling in their application in a ward near that which they represent simply because of the position they hold. In the eyes of the public, it smacks of cronyism, and planning as a quasi-judicial function has to be seen strictly above board. Neither is it good governance. I therefore move the motion. Thank you, Mr. Mayor.
Councillor Short, a second.
Thank you, Mayor. I formally second the motion and I'd like to reserve the right to speak later.
Okay, thank you. I believe we have an amendment. Councillor Paul Foster.
Thanks, Mayor. Hopefully, Councillor Turner and our members have received an advance copy of our proposed amendments to aid the progress of the motion. What we'd like to do is respectfully delete the council resolves to amend the constitution as follows, and then insert council resolves to request that the governance committee reviews the following suggested amendments to the council's constitution and reports back with recommendations for consideration as quickly as possible. And just to give some background, Mayor, as why we're proposing that is all the time I've been on this council, any and all amendments to the constitution are considered by the governance committee first, and then recommendations are brought to council for consideration. Thank you.
Is that seconded?
That's seconded, Mr. Mayor. I think that's. And in seconding it, I would just propose is that is the normal process that we have adopted at this council. Is that when there is any amendments to be made at to the constitution, it has usually been to the governance to consider in the first instance. So I second the motion. Thank you.
Councillor Turner, do you accept that amendment as a friendly amendment?
I do.
In which case that now becomes the substantive. Does anybody else wish to speak to it? Councillor Karen Walton.
Thank you, Mr. Mayor. Well, this is a change for us. We welcome the fact that this constitutional change is being considered by the Governance Committee, which is, we think, hasn't been quite true of other constitutional issues, which have been bypassed by this council on a number of occasions, such as the licensing committee, when an extra member on that, the changes to the number of neighbourhood hubs and the appointment of chairpersons to the neighbourhood hubs, to name a few. But we welcome the fact that this issue is going to go to governance so that it can be talked about and discussed, hopefully with the two parts being separate because they are two separate issues. We were just wondering about the timescale and when it would be brought back for final decision to full council. We need to ask the governance committee to look at the whole process of the planning committee while it's doing this process and how it proceeds in the future. So although we support the amendment going to the governance committee, we are in two minds for the whole thing, which just doesn't seem right tonight. I'm sorry.
Councillor Margaret Smith.
Thank you, Mr. Mayor. I certainly welcome the idea that the Governance Constitution Committee subcommittee will meet and discuss it. It seems quite some time since they actually have met. I just wondered, though, with the amendment saying as quickly as possible, there is a Governance Committee meeting on Monday evening. I'm just wondering whether an extra item could be put onto that Governance Committee, as an extra item has been put on this council meeting tonight, because obviously of the urgency of it, and whether that could possibly be put onto the Governance Committee on Monday night as an item of urgency, and then it could come back quickly to this council.
Thank you. Before I call on Councillor Matthew Tomlinson, I'm advised that that is down to the Chair of Governance to decide whether he accepts that additional item or not. Okay.
Mayor, for allowing me to come back. How do I go about that?
This is in the building, Mr. Mayor.
Well, if the chair would like to indicate that he wishes to speak, he might be able to give you the answer.
If you put it in an email, Councillor Smith, I'll have a look at that tomorrow and get back to you straight away.
Councillor Matthew Tomlinson.
Thank you, Mr. Mayor. I think the way this debate is going illustrates perfectly why we shouldn't consider individual parts of the Constitution at full council. These should be considered, thought through, part of a plan, discussed by the Governance Committee with reasons for any changes, and then brought back to full council for full consideration. Otherwise, we open a potentially a Pandora's box of a majority group running this council and suggesting changes to the Constitution at a whim, and bringing it to full council and having enough numbers just to get it voted through. I think the amendment is a sensible one. It allows time for debate. I'm not on the Governance Committee, so I'll say this here and now. I don't think it's a good idea to discuss it on Monday. The agenda's already out, and this will need some consideration and thought. But that's my personal view, and not the view of the Cabinet or the Chair of the Governance Committee, who clearly I have no influence over whatsoever. But no, I wish I did, but I don't. But I think, it does, for me, going forward, it illustrates a perfectly well-made point that changes to something as important to the Constitution ought to be made in a considered way, with lots of thought and debate, and not just brought to full council. And I'll certainly be supporting the amendment.
I can just say the amendment's already been accepted, so it's now part of the substantive. Is there anybody else who wishes to speak? Councillor Alan Ogilvie.
Thank you, Mayor. Just in the interest of accuracy, my understanding is that the Governance Committee meeting next week is on Tuesday and not Monday.
Is there anybody else who wishes to speak without being pedantic? Although, point well made. In which case, Councillor Shaw, do you wish to speak?
No, that's fine, thank you.
Councillor Turner, would you like to summate?
Thank you, Mr. Mayor. Yeah, I mean, it's a friendly amendment. I accept that. I would just say I wouldn't want the changes to the Constitution to have a number of issues that gather over a period of time that could fester and cause a risk of a collaborative council. There might be some times when the Constitution does need changing because it's something critical, but I accept your point that it's nice. It's probably a better approach to sweep up a number of issues and take them up as into one amendment rather than having 20 amendments to the Constitution. But sometimes I do feel quite strongly about this. And so anyway, I'm happy that it's going to the Governance Committee. Thank you.
Thank you. Is there any members of the public wish to speak? No. Do we have anybody against? Any abstentions? In which case do we take that as unanimously carried? That will be referred to the Governance Committee as soon as possible, that it can be facilitated. That then takes us to questions to the Leader of Council. Do we have any questions for the Leader? Councillor Margaret Smith.
Yes, I'm on now. Thank you. I'd like to just ask a question of the Leader. Perhaps he could just clarify one or two things for me. I know that the bank holiday event on Monday due to the Queen's sad passing was unexpected, but we did have a number of days, obviously, to prepare for it. Over the last day or so, moving around, there has been a situation where there has been an amazing amount of wheelie bins on people's pavements. Some of them have been there overnight, some were taken in last night, some are back out this morning. And that is because the events of Monday, quite rightly, the bins were not collected. And I agree with that. I think it was quite right that we didn't collect the bins on Monday. But the Tuesday collection then went to Wednesday, and the Wednesday collection went to Thursday, and so on and so forth. So the Monday collection is now on Saturday. And I just wondered whether it would have been, when we're thinking about it, if it ever happens again, that we suddenly have a bank holiday, that it would have been better to actually postpone the Monday one to Saturday and actually carry on with the Tuesday, Wednesday, Thursday and Friday as they would normally have been, and actually give the people that are not collecting on the Monday a little bit more warning. I know it was put on Facebook, but I have to say there are 57,000 houses in the borough these days, and not everybody actually follows Facebook to any degree. So I just wondered whether we could think a bit better about how we actually attack something like this, and maybe there is some rationale that I can't actually see at this moment, and I would be grateful for the Leader to actually explain to me why it was done the way it was. Thank you.
Councillor Foster.
Thanks, Councillor Mrs. Smith. There was a lot of thought went into. Now, clearly, we were. I'm just a bit surprised by the question, to be honest with you. We couldn't plan for Her Majesty the Queen dying, but we could plan that our staff, as a mark of respect, and to a mark of respect to our community, the bins weren't emptied in South Ribble on the day of Her Majesty's funeral. We had two options. We had three options, didn't we? We just didn't empty the bins at all for those residents that were due to be collected on the Monday. They could wait 2 weeks' time. That wasn't considered. That wasn't acceptable. We collected the bins. We didn't collect the bins on the Monday. We collected them on the Saturday. Well, that wasn't considered appropriate because that meant that those residents on the Monday would have 5 days of extra waste to collect in the bins and also to leave their bins out on the road for 5 days. We considered it most appropriate and we published it on as best we could because please remember, councillors, we were trying to be respectful to the mourning period of Her Majesty the Queen by using our social media to an absolute minimum. But we published every community hub, and we published on our Facebook and our Twitter accounts and on the council's website that everything had slipped by 24 hours, because the officers and the cabinet considered that if you leave your bin out and you go out in the morning and the afternoon, you realise it's not been collected, you'll leave it out because it might be collected the next day, as it was. So we just didn't think it appropriate whatsoever to not empty the bins on the Monday and just leave them for 2 weeks. And then we didn't think it was appropriate to leave the bin there for an extra 5 days before it was collected on the Saturday. We noted and we've monitored social media a lot regarding the bins, and what was really pleasing was one resident was saying the bin's not been emptied today, and then all the neighbours and colleagues were sending friends off because it's going to be emptied tomorrow. And it worked really well. We considered, actually, given the pressures that the council were under, given the exceptional circumstances of the events that we found ourselves in, it was the appropriate decision, it was the right decision, and it's worked quite well. Thank you, Mayor.
Councillor Smith, you wish to come back?
Mr. Mayor. I just don't understand why Councillor Foster has to start the answer with, I don't think this is an appropriate question. I think it is an appropriate question, that if we feel that it is necessary to ask the executive a question, then we're allowed to ask it. And it's no criticism, it's just asking the question so we can have an understanding of the answer. Thank you.
Okay, thank you for that. I think I will decide whether it's an appropriate question or not, and I decided it was. And if you are going to have a supplementary, I would prefer it to be another question, not a comment on the answer that you received. So anyway, have we got any more questions for the Leader of the Council? Councillor Karen Walton.
Very much, Mr. Mayor. I'm referring back to item 9, actually, on page 36 of the annual performance report. And it says 1,704 calls were answered each week through the contact centre. Could the leader tell us the percentage of calls answered within 90 seconds? The target is 40%, and it was 11.43% at the end of June quarter. And the percentage of abandoned calls, the target is 15%, and it was 37.13% in quarter 1 in June. When will these be achieved, please?
Councillor Foster.
Thanks, Mayor. As Councillor Walton is acutely aware, the Gateway, because of the pandemic, because of shortage of staff, because of the £150 additional allowance that the government on the fuel allowances asked councils to pay, has been under extreme pressure. As Councillor Walton is also aware, we've recruited heavily into that area of the council over the last 6 months. And as Councillor Walton is also aware again, those call rates have improved significantly over the past quarter. I clearly don't have that information to hand. Councillor Walton, if you give me advance notice of the question, clearly I would have had that here for you, but I'll ask the officers to write.
Any other questions to the Leader? In which case we now move on to members of...
2 questions from the members of the public.
Oh, I apologise. There are 2 members. There are 2 questions from members of the public. If the member of the public doesn't appear to be here, unless somebody indicates otherwise. Councillor Foster, as you have the questions in front of you, would you like to read them out first and then answer them?
So the first question, so I don't know which order you want this in, about the museum. The South Ribble Museum is undergoing some emergency and urgent repairs currently, structurally. As many members are aware, there's some mites found in there over the past 12 months, which is doing a lot of damage to the materials contained within the museum. And we're hoping that the museum will be open in the spring, fully open in the spring of next year. And we will, of course, bring forward to council an update as soon as we have one. The second question, Mayor, was can you please explain about the recent article in the LEP regarding the cost of the refurbishment of the Vernon Carroll Cricket Club at Pavement said to be £265,000. The BBC's programme showing the Cabinet meeting with Freddie Flintoff agreed to £100,000, with Freddie donating £25,000 of his own money and raising another 25,000. So why is SRBC paying the 265? Right. Mayor, the original budget was established for £175,000. £150,000 of this was funded by Section 106 receipt as part of the arrangements for the transfer of land at the Vernon Carroll Sports Club and Penwitham Reservoir to the council from Lane End Developments Construction Limited. And secondly, there was a transfer of £25,000 from the existing approved leisure local budget. At the Cabinet meeting of November 2021, at the time the documentary was filmed, an increase of £75,000 was approved, funded by £50,000 of new external funding, i.e. Mr Flintoff himself and his associates, and £25,000 from the council's internal resources. Further to this, in January 2022, after the filming of the documentary and the refinement of the schedule of works, this budget was increased by a further £15,000 through refinement from the approved existing leisure local capital budget. And I can confirm to council that Mr Flintoff's £25,000 and the additional £25,000 from Mr Flintoff's associates have both been received by the council. Thank you.
Right, in which case, if there aren't any other questions to the leader, if we move on to the cabinet members, starting with the cabinet member who's on the bit of paper, I've stuck everything else on top of. Councillor Mick Tidderington, cabinet member for health and wellbeing. Councillor Caroline Moon.
Thank you, Mr Mayor. I just want to ask a question, Councillor Tidderington, around the Leyland Leisure Centre, and I can only speak for Leyland because that was my experience. There's still a booking system in place for access to the swimming pool, which the staff at the Leisure Centre are saying is related to COVID. Understand why that was in at the time, but I wonder if it's something that you could review, could look at, could potentially be relaxed in any way, because I use the Leisure Centre regularly, went on Friday, as we quite regularly do with the children. I wasn't responsible for booking on this occasion. My friend was, hadn't booked, got there, 4 people to swim, and there was only 3 spaces left available, which meant one person couldn't go in the pool. The 3 went in and that was fine, but there was probably only about 10 people in the whole of Leyland Pool, and it felt like it was really sparse. And I've got one person who can't swim, couldn't go in. So it just went through my mind, respect why it was put there, but is that something that you could look at, please? And then people have got more access maybe now to use the pool. Thank you.
Councillor Tidderington.
Well, yeah, I thank you for your question, and certainly it's something that that I will look at personally and respond to. And I would just say, I mean, if any members or indeed members of the public do encounter those problems like that, please let us know immediately and we'll take immediate steps. Thank you.
Don't wish to come back. Councillor Margaret Smith.
Thank you, Mr Mayor. Councillor Tidderington, I think it was possibly April time, February time, when we had the report of the about the leisure refurbishments for the leisure centres. And I know I asked at the time about the tiling of the pools, and you said yes, they were going to be retiled, and then subsequently you said they weren't. So that was fine. I understood that. And then you gave us the refurbishment programme, that it was going to be phased over the summer, and that it would be ready for the autumn. We're now autumn time, going into winter. I just wondered how the refurbishment has gone, and if you could update us as to where we are in the progress of where you are financially with it. Thank you.
Recall that when I made a report to council in relation to the decarbonisation programme, I did also say that there would be a phase 2 when the refurbishment would take place. I do not remember, to be honest with you, or recall that I said it would be ready by autumn. But I mean, the issue is that the refurbishment of the pool, of the leisure centres, was always going to be in phase 2. I think I did report that there was some work that's going to be carried out because it needed to be aligned with the decarbonisation work. So at the moment, there is a report that is in phase 2 that we can have a further discussion in relation to that. I mean, I'm sure you'll be interested in that. But at the moment, I can't say to you that when the refurbishment is going to be complete, but we can discuss it in phase 2.
Do we have any other questions from members to the Cabinet Member? Do we have any questions from the public? Yes, if you'd like to come forward to a microphone. And I think you probably know the form, but if you could let us know your name and then ask your question.
Yeah, I'm Jenny Hurley. I'm here. I'm a member of the Protect Chorley and South Ribble Hospital campaign. In 2019, Chorley Borough Council put a motion to their council that opposed the closure of Chorley and South Ribble A&E. In this motion, they also expressed support for a one-site hospital in central Lancashire. The campaign to protect Chorley and South Ribble Hospital was opposed this stance with concerns around the size of the new build, a reduction in services and beds, and the restrictions to access to hospital services for people throughout the borough. When South Ribble Borough Council members approached us to submit their own motion opposing the closure of the A&E, many councillors met with us to hear our concerns. Because of this, we were grateful to South Ribble Council motion from January 2020 admitted support of the one-site hospital at that time. We now have the new hospital programme in progress that addresses this issue. There are no details on size of build, services, beds, or any restriction to access. And we strongly feel that changes should not be agreed until these are known. It's no good having a shiny brand new hospital if the waiting list is so long you can't get through the door. It's therefore some concern to us that the leader of the council made a press statement asking the new hospital programme to finalise the plans in August, without knowing what those plans contain. May we ask if this means that the council has changed their stance on this? And is there any scope for us to meet with councillors or a council representative who sits within the new hospital programme or the integrated care partnership so we can discuss this further? We also have GP surgeries being consolidated with fewer staff, more treatments and more patients, and an A&E that is only open 12 hours is little more than a 24-hour GP service, despite assurances from previous Secretary of State for Health. This request comes especially since the Health and Care Bill and the formation of the Integrated Care Board that omits the public from the 6 sub-board meetings, including the Public Engagement and Transparency Board. The Integrated Care Partnerships and Workplace Partnership meetings are also off site for the public. So we're left with only a handful of elected representatives to voice our concerns. And it's with great worry that those concerns are no longer being heard. So in the case of being open and transparent with this, we would like to request an audience with those members, please.
Councillor Titherington.
Yeah. Well, first of all, I think all members will share the concerns that have been expressed in relation to waiting times. And I would agree, and I'm sure all members would agree wholeheartedly, that if you have a brand new spanking hospital, it needs to be accessible and the waiting times need to be reduced. And also, ambulances need to be answering calls a lot faster than they are doing. I think that the changes to the structure in the NHS with the introduction of the integrated care boards, partnerships and everything else. I think it's still something that we all are trying to come to terms with. You know, and I think the representation of local authorities on that is still a cause for concern, and we will develop it. But I mean, in terms of the new establishment and the council had a new hospital, I don't think the council has made any decision. We have received some sort of reports from the NHS about what they're considering and the options that are available. And I think that there will be a number of different views that will be expressed by members and members of the public in relation to that. But in terms of representations made to us in relation to any of those things, then I would certainly be prepared to meet with anybody who wants to express a view in relation to that. So, I mean, in that sense, I can say there's an open door for anybody who wants to talk to me about those particular issues. Thank you.
Okay, thank you. So you have your offer of a meeting. Would you like to come back? Or?
Do I just email him if that's the case? Right, thank you. Sorry. Thank you, Mr. Mayor.
Okay, do we have any other questions for the Cabinet member? No, in which case, if we then move on to questions to the Cabinet member, Communities, Social Justice and Wealth Building, Councillor Aniela Belinsky-Gelder. Councillor Damien Bretherton.
Thank you, Mayor. It's a few questions regarding the community hub. Why have repeated requests for community-inspired Welcome to Walton Park signs somewhere along the Carwood Road or on the Carwood Road roundabout been rejected by our community hub chair, despite continued support from our residents? The A6 main road and cycle routes nearby point to Walton Park. But unless travellers know the area, they wouldn't know that they have arrived. Residents are often asked, where is Walton Park? A welcome sign will prevent this confusion. Residents residing in that area strongly identify with Walton Park. A welcome sign is a friendly gesture, leaving a lasting and positive impression on visitors. It also creates a sense of pride and belonging in the community and bolsters the feel-good factor of living in an area cared for by the community. A Welcome to Walton Park sign would support the mantra, love where you live. The second question, the perimeter galvanised steel railings around the Bellis Way playground have not been painted for probably over 20 years and look tatty. Why has our club chairman only offered to supply the materials to repaint the railings, leaving short the cost of the man hours to complete this project? Why are our hard-working and time-pressed residents expected to volunteer to carry out this difficult task, which one would expect to be carried out by professional tradesmen? The Friends group is made up of mainly working parents and not necessarily skilled in the painting trade. Also, you might not have the information available now, but if you can get it to me at some point, what was the accumulated reserve for our Walton Liddale West ward at the time that Councillor Campbell and myself became councillors in May 19? What was the fund available for our ward? And what has the amount been allocated as councillors to that fund since then? So effectively, what's the total part that's been allocated to Walton Liddale West up to May 19 and since then? And how much of that reserve allocated to our Walton Liddell West Ward has been spent in our ward. Thank you.
Thank you. Can you hear me? Thank you for your questions. So I think I'll take two of them at once. In terms of the projects which you're talking about, some of the gateway schemes, one of them which you're referring to about the welcome signs, they have been through the hubs. Penwitham have got a great big deer and a little baby deer. I think Walton Lee Dale, they've got a new deer on a roundabout as well. And all of that is decided by each hub individually. It's not something that I make decision on. So the project, there's 5 hubs and there's over 100 projects on those 5 hubs. And I'm not personally responsible for any of those projects. Each hub is. So if a group of councillors in each hub want to forward a project idea and want to get that through the hub and funding for it, that's something that each hub decides together. And as you know, all the hubs are made up of, I mean, the Penwitham one's made up of Liberal Democrats and Labour. Yours is made up of a mixture of Labour and Conservative, and Leyland and Farrington is Labour and Conservative. So they're all made up differently. I understand that. But that is still an argument or a discussion you have to have in each hub to get your project onto the action plan for that hub. So that applies to both your gateway welcome signs and your Bellis Way. So as well with your Bellis Way and your painting your railings, that's something you've got to get your hub to decide to fund. In terms of your budget and the funding that you have for each hub, that is all explicit in every report. So you can ask your chair at any time to see what your budget is. When they were, before it was a community hub, it was a neighbourhood forum. And that's what the budget you're talking about in 2019, which you inherited. And that money is allowed to roll over, generally is allowed to roll over from year to year. So I think Leyland and Farrington get £9,000 a year. So it's proportional to the number of councillors that sit on there. But what we're going to do this time is we're going to say, if you can't spend the budget, we're going to put it back into the boost fund, which is a £25,000 boost fund. So each hub does have its own money. It should be the information. If you ask officers, the officers will present you with that information. Every report that I bring, introducing, evaluating the hubs, all the budget information is there because I make sure it is. I ask for it to be there so that all the members can see how much money they've got for each of their hubs. So I can let you know what was available in 2019. It doesn't matter really now what was, because you've got your budgets for this year and next year, but I can still let you know what it is if you want to know.
If you would like a supplementary.
Yeah, thank you for that. So is it right that it's not the council's policy then to refuse welcome signs in any particular area? Because the impression that I got was it's something that that wasn't allowed.
Sorry, I wouldn't normally speak.
Sorry.
I do apologise.
I haven't invited you to speak, and this is questions to members of the cabinet.
Yes.
If you've got a specific issue with your hub and the way decisions are made, you'll have to write to me and I'll be able to respond to you when I speak to the chair of the hub. But it is down to each hub to have these discussions and debates and make decisions on what their action plans are going to look like for the next 12 months.
I'm afraid you don't get to come back 3 times. No, I'm afraid you get one supplementary question. Councillor Lomax, you may well wish to pose a question rather than give an answer.
We'll just, sorry, at this time I will just leave it and we'll have a discussion with Angela Belinsky, and I don't mind having one again with Councillor Bretherton.
Okay, thank you. Didn't have any further questions for Councillor Aniela Belinsky-Gelder. Councillor Karen Walton.
Thank you, Mr Mayor. Could I ask the Cabinet Member why there has been a long delay in organisations not receiving the grants from the Community Hub Booster Fund, the Booster Fund Plus and the Leisure Local Community Fund, as organisations are relying on this money to start their projects as soon as possible? I have received a number of inquiries concerning this issue and I'd just like some information.
Thanks for your question. I suppose I would disagree that there's been a long delay. I think some of the grants were £48,000, so we needed to make sure that we did the due diligence. We had to make sure that all the decisions were made with legal before we could give money out. And we also had a list of things that we were expecting from the community groups in return for the money, to like say that it's from South Ribble and things like that. So we just needed to make sure that we did everything properly. It's been over the summer period, so the staff aren't all in at the same time, and so I probably disagree and say it hasn't taken that long in the light of the number of grants and some of the size of the grants. Thank you.
We're expecting to do some of the improvements, fairly soon after they'd been notified that they would receive the money. And I think when we got to know, I think it was May, early June, that this money was going to be allocated. And I think now that it's towards the end of September, I think it has been a long delay. And I understand the reasons why it has to go through the correct audit procedures, but that is something that we as a group did say that we were concerned with how
Sorry,
it was being dealt.
Councillor Walton, this seems to be a disagreement, not a question.
Okay.
You actually have a follow-up question.
Expect the organisations to receive the money.
Thanks for that. The director who's signing them off has already started to sign some of the grants off. The groups which you're referring to have contacted us and we've communicated with them. So nobody's in the dark. They're aware of the timelines and things like that. Thank you.
Councillor Caleb Tomlinson.
Thank you, Mr. Mayor. Is the cabinet, is the portfolio holder aware of any welcome signs for Wordon Park Estate, Broadfield Estate, Farrington Moss, or Wade Hall? Thank you.
No. I'm not.
Do we have any other questions for the Cabinet Member from members of the Council? Councillor Ange Turner.
Thank you, Mr. Mayor. I'd just like to ask the question, how fair do you think it is that the Leader of the Council and the Cabinet Member get to make a decision on which organisations receive the boost funding, given that the community hubs are actually bottom-up decision-making rather than top-down? Thank you.
So the way that the grants were decided was through the hubs. The hubs got the full grant list. They decided first which grants would go forward to the leader and the cabinet member. So it did come from the bottom. The community put the applications in for the things that they wanted to happen. The community hubs decided which grants to put forward, and then the cabinet member and leader made the final decision based on what the community hubs had already decided.
Right, do you have a supplementary question, or is it just thanks for the response?
Yeah, I do actually. So the projects do come from the community hubs, but the decision is made by yourself and the leader of the council only, which means that some are rejected and some are approved. So, but at the end of the day, the two of you are making that decision as to what go ahead, which ones go ahead and which don't. I just think there's perhaps a better way of doing that so that it's more exclusive or inclusive, sorry.
I've forgotten your question, sorry.
What I'm saying is that you're still selecting some and you're not selecting others. And there's just two of you doing it, and you're both members of the executive, and one's leader and one's the cabinet member, both of the Labour minority administration, is the point I'm making. Thank you.
Thank you for repeating that. So there was a discussion with directors in terms of auditors being happy with the way decisions were made, and that was the process that the auditors decided would be suitable. It had to be the hubs and then the leader and the cabinet. It also actually, the auditors also suggested that partners like the police and things like that could be involved at the community hub level. But that was just a decision that the hubs could make themselves. But that was all decided. The process was decided by auditors.
Councillor Phil Smith.
Thank you, Mr. Mayor. There's obviously some clear confusion with regard to the rules and regulations of how the funding for the community hubs and so on.
Sorry, could you pose a question, please?
I'm just getting round to it, Mr. Mayor. If you give me time, I will get there. So, excuse me, sorry, I will. Right, there's obviously some confusion, I'm sorry to repeat it again, about the process. Would it be a good idea, and I'm asking the cabinet member, would it be a good idea that we have some sort of further learning hour or a further meeting outside of this meeting, or some further paperwork to reiterate and confirm what the process is? Thank you, Mr. Mayor.
Yeah, I mean, I'm happy to ask for people's opinions and ideas on how they might think that more grassroots process would be carried out. And I'm also keen to share the legal and all the different auditing and procedural decision making that happened. Yeah, that's fine. Anything to have.
Ask another question, but I have to say I'm not confused with it, but members are confused. And rather than let's just have a meeting, a Saturday morning meeting or a meeting, whatever, a learning hour, so at least members can go talk face to face in a meeting room, so we all understand what's going on. Thank you.
I think that question was, do you agree with what he just said? So.
Perhaps the best thing to do is if you would write to me with what your expectations are around the learning hour, then I can speak to people about it, and then we can fulfil those expectations.
I'm afraid you've had your stab at this one. Do we have any other questions for the cabinet member from members of the council? In which case, are there any questions from the public? No, that then takes us on to questions for the cabinet member, finance, property and assets, Councillor Matthew Tomlinson. I think, Councillor Tomlinson, you can now breathe a sigh of relief. And that takes us on to questions for the cabinet member, planning, business support and regeneration, Councillor James Flannery. And the first one is from Councillor Paul Hardman.
Thank you, Mr. Mayor. Firstly, I'd like to thank the Cabinet Member and Director of Planning for taking time to meet with residents in Farrington regarding the proposed cricket facility. Irrespective of the residents' words, you're all right for a Liverpool fan. As you're aware, residents feel very let down with the support, engagement and lack of response from both Lancashire County Council and their councillor representatives, and have expressed concerns regarding the cricket facility at Farrington. Councillor Alty and I met with residents, and Jonathan, and I'm acutely aware you have, they're not against the proposal, but they want their views heard and concerns addressed to make it better for them, the people who actually live there. Can I have your ongoing assurances that we at South Ribble will continue to champion the voice of our residents and press Lancashire County Council to begin to engage and cooperate with our residents?
Thank you, Mr. Mayor. Thank you, Councillor. First of all, I'd just like to say well done to you and Councillor Alty and obviously the Director of Planning, because you facilitated an excellent meeting there to alleviate the concerns of the residents. And if anyone's been down to the new developments proposed for the cricket ground in Farrington, you'll notice that the adjacencies are really challenging for the existing residents there. So the feedback I've had after the meeting, excuse me, I didn't attend, and I know you did attend, was the residents said, thank you, it's finally good to see that someone's listening. So well done, and thanks for the question. And yes, we will continue to challenge Lancashire County on the development, but in the right way. So thank you.
Do you wish to ask a supplementary? No. In which case, Councillor Caroline Moon.
Thank you, Mr. Mayor. Councillor Flannery, I want to ask you about car parking on Worden Park. Again, the new signage has gone in at last. Eventually we got there and the machine is there. The sign says the Monday to Friday, restrictions are in place between 8:30 a.m. 4 p.m. That's it. It doesn't obviously express anything around the fact that this is not in place non-term time. So I just wonder, could you just help us to understand what mechanism is the council planning to use to make it clear to residents that this is not in place non-term time? And can you confirm or otherwise tonight or in the future which non-term time you're using? I'm going to assume Lancashire's, but it would just be good to know because it's not the same for every school, even in South Ribble, never mind beyond. So what mechanism are you using and whose term time are you using? I've got another question. You want that now? Just as one other point, I wonder, could you review the information on the board with regards to disabled badge holders? Because there is a line on the board underneath the exclusions, and then it says 2 hours, no return within 3 hours. And then it makes a comment in relation to the disabled blue badge. That's caused some confusion as to whether it's disabled badge holders are not covered by these restrictions, or are they allowed to return within the 3 hours? And when you read the sign, I hope it will make sense to you, Councillor Flannery, that it's quite confusing which they fit into.
Thank you, Councillor Moon, for your questions. I don't want to waste anyone's time, but I think you may have noticed, because Councillor Ogilvie and I have been exchanging emails over the summer regarding the machines and the issues we had with the chips, and the timetable which we were given was actually achieved, which I think we're all pleased about. The issues you raised tonight, Councillor Moon, I wasn't aware of, so thank you for raising them, and I will be on that tomorrow. And I'll get a response to you written straight away. So thanks for raising them. Cheers.
You okay with the answer? Yeah. Councillor Alan Ogilvie.
Thank you, Mr. Mayor. Thanks for that response. Just as an add-on to that, if you look at the current signage at the moment, there is no time restriction whatsoever for the overflow car park. But with the signage in the main car park as it stands, people who park in that part of the park are restricted to a maximum of 2 hours. So if there is no change to the signage and term time is not an applicable item, then come the peak summertime, people will go to the main car park and have to leave after 2 hours. people can go to the overflow car park, assuming you're opening it, and they can stay there for as long as they like, because the two signs are different. One says main car park rules and regulations. The other one says overflow car park rules and regulations. So if you leave the signage as it is, you will have big problems come summer holidays. Thank you.
Thanks, Councillor Ogilvie. Again, thanks for pointing out the inconsistencies which are there. We will look at this tomorrow, and I will also write to you with a response. But I agree with you, there shouldn't be ambiguity. This is, with respect, this is a straight up and down job. I'm not sure why this is happening in Weirden Park. I don't know. And I will also ask for a review of the other parks as well to see what's going on there. So thanks for your question, and I will get back to you. Thank you.
Any other questions for the Cabinet Member for Planning, Business Support and Regeneration? None from members of the Council. Any from the public? No, in which case that brings that item to a conclusion. The next item is exclusion of the press and public. We have two items that involve the disclosure of exempt information as defined in paragraph 1 of part 1 of Schedule 12A to the Local Government Act 1972. Do we have somebody to move exclusion? Moved by Councillor Foster. Is that seconded? Seconded. Everybody agreed?